Okay, how many of you out there think, hey, you know what? I have, and you think this to yourself because, of course, we're not the type of people to just be boastful or anything like that. But you're like, yeah, I've got a pretty good personality. I mean, people like having me around. I'm going to raise my hand on that one. I get invited to the parties. Like, generally, people like me. What was it, was it Stuart Smalley in Saturday Night Live? I mean, I might be too old for several of you listening, I'm sure, but the whole, oh, by golly, people like me. Remember when he would stand in front of the mirror and say that? Yeah, I remember those days. But nevertheless, just because you have a great personality doesn't mean that people are going to buy from you though. Okay. I mean, here's the thing. I just got through reading this book. I swear, I feel like I've talked about it quite a bit because it's probably been one of the best business books that I've read in a long time. It's called Cues, and it's talking about charismatic communication. And the author, Vanessa Van Edwards, I'm an Audible girl, so I mean, she reads the book on Audible, and she's got such an engaging voice as well too. But nevertheless, as I was reading this book, I was like, oh my gosh, I have learned so much about my own self that frankly needed to change because I've always thought, hey, I have a great personality. And typically, y'all, when I'm in front of other people and especially, potential client prospects and that kind of thing, I can connect pretty well with people and I ask the right questions. My dear friend, Melissa Cameron, oh my gosh, which I don't think she listens, but she needs to on this episode. She and her husband, Jeff, just crack me up. They call me Barbara Wawa because Barbara Walters, again, I might be too old for some of you listening, but Barbara Walters what was she on ABC? I think she was the ABC affiliate. Anyway, she was a national news reporter I think she started her career in the 1960s, right? And she was known as the reporter who would ask the hard questions, right? And I'm kind of known in my friend group as the person to ask questions because I want to dig deep to get to understand and know people better. But this book, so I've got to go back to this book about charismatic communication. So the author, Vanessa Van Edwards, is talking about charisma is, you measure charisma based on two aspects, one being warmth and one being competence. Okay. And so you've got to have an equal calibration of both, or depending on your situation and circumstance, you've got to up the warmth or you've got to up the competence depending on what you're doing. So let me give you an example of this. So, those of us who are eyes on the disc, which I'm an influencer type, energetic, positive, want everybody to have a good time type of a person. And then the D type, and I'm an extrovert, and our other extrovert type is called the D as well too. They're dominant. They're a little bit more intense, results oriented, it can be very, of course, dominant in nature, right? And then I'll just go ahead and describe the other two pieces. So our introverts are the S and C types. So our steady relators are peaceful, harmonious. They love people, but they're a little bit more introverted. They just want peace and harmony. They can be indecisive at times as well. And then our C types are our conscientious types, and they are non-emotional. They're high introverts. Again, non-emotional, data focused, very highly analytical. Just, give me the facts, please type people. Okay. So, but our D and I type people are the extroverts. All right. And so our extroverted personalities, especially the I types, can, warm up the conversation. They smile. They make people feel warm and welcome around them. They make people feel comfortable around them as well, too. Sometimes our D-type personalities, and I shared it on a prior episode about a D-type personality that I was with that was, whoa, like overly aggressive, like so D and had no radar as to how he came across to anybody in the room, and because he was so aggressive and he was so off-putting to everybody in the room. So you'll have to go back and listen to that episode. It was like 2 episodes ago. But anyway, I digress. Nevertheless, but us I types and even our S types as well too, they can smile. They can warm things up, get people feeling comfortable around them. But what also happens, and I found this out to be true for me, and this is why I'm sharing it with you, is Van Edwards in the book talks about competence cues. And competence cues are, competence, someone who, gives the data, gives the charts, talks about brainstorming, talks about talks about the things, right, that would increase your level of competence. And so what I have struggled with, and I'm just being very vulnerable here, is, I mean, I've always been known to be the inviter, the warm, fun, energetic type. I've had to really work on building up my competence cues, okay? Because not everybody is going to buy from the fun girl. They're just not, right? We've got to show that what it is that we do, the value that we bring to the table, we've got to show people why it's valuable. And that's the competence part of charismatic communication, all right? So you've got to have an equilibrium of both, if you will. But however, I will say this much. When you're presenting to a client, when you're giving clients feedback, or say you're presenting, I do a lot of trainings. And so when I'm up, training and presenting, I want to, introduce my training in a fun, informational type of a style, because I really want people to be engaged with the conversation. You do that I've got to really amp up the energy and the positivity and that kind of thing. But let me tell you, when it comes to my charts and graphs and talking about the specific data related stuff that I need for these people to be able to take away, I will tone down the smile. I'll even slow down my speech as well too, when I'm trying to make a point and show competence that I know my stuff. Okay. So for my extroverts out there that tend to be a little bit more on the influencer side of things, and even my ID mix of people, which I'm an ID mix on the disc. I have both influencer and dominance in my personality, big time. Okay. So if you're one of these types, here's what you've got to do. You've got to make sure that you're warm in the beginning of your conversation and at the end of your conversation and throughout as well too. Smile, use your hands, palms up. That means inviting, right? Leaning in means that you're, showing respect to the person that you're with, locking eyes, that whole bit. I mean, we've heard these things before. But then when it comes time to actually present the content, the information, you've got to slow down, and you've got to use competence cues words. You've got to talk about the research. You've got to talk about the brainstorming. You've got to talk about the data, right? And there's got to be an equal amount of both warmth and competence in order for people to want to buy from you. So that's kind of my word of warning, if you will, for my, extroverted, high energy personalities, just like me. Like, that's how I am. And I have really had to pay attention to even how I'm training, because these cues that we signal to people, I think I read it. It was a statistic. I don't know if it was in this book or something else, some other research that I was reading recently, that said that 93% of people have already made their decision whether or not they're going to listen to you by your nonverbals that you're signaling. Okay. That's freaking huge. So if you're not paying attention to how you're coming across to people in your communication, you're leaving money on the table. And I know we don't have time for that, right? Okay, so for my extroverted, high energy people, slow it down a little bit. Be sure to smile, but then also be sure to talk about your brainstorming, your research, your data, and your facts as well too. We've got to have an equal balance of both. I hope this was helpful information. Oh, and by the way, if you haven't yet downloaded my free resource, it's my cheat sheet. Go to heatherlisle.com, Heather, L-I-S as in Sam, L-E.com/resources. At the top of my resources page is my free cheat sheet. It will give you everything that you need to know to be able to identify the various communication styles and how to communicate to each. This is a game changer. Downloading, I've got several copies all around my office and in my purse and in my planner and that kind of my journal as well too, because it just helps to remind us that not everybody communicates like we do, right? And so we've got to slow it down. We've got to think about who is the person that we're communicating with and what do they need to hear from us in order to, elicit a response, whatever that call to action might be for you, whether that's booking the appointment, paying, buying the thing, selecting the retainer agreement, calling you for more information, whatever it is for you. When you know how to communicate to the person who you're trying to sell to, oh my gosh, it makes everything easier. easier. Okay. And we make more sales and we keep that client pipeline full too. So go download that resource, share this episode with someone that you think might derive some benefit from it as well too. And I would absolutely freaking love it if you could give me a 5-star rating on iTunes. Okay. So until next time, see you then.